Hey guys, this is Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy. Hey, today we're talking about my favorite subject, which is sales. All right, we got a great subject for ourselves today. So let's go ahead and dive right on into it. So what's our subject for today? It's selling, how to make a decisions, pros and cons technique. What did he say? I said selling, how to make a decision, pros versus cons technique. Well, I'm going to tell you what, that's a pretty good one right there. And if you're interested, let me go ahead and dive right on into it. You know, here recently I had to make a decision. And I did a video a while back talking about the Ben Franklin close. And basically, in a nutshell, this is the Ben Franklin close. But it's also a way for you to make informed decisions. It's a technique you can use to share with your customers for them to maybe weigh the pros and the cons on why they should invest with you. Now, the way it was taught to me, it was many, many years ago, was, you know, the first thing that you do is you get a piece of paper. With the piece of paper, you write the pros, and on the right side, you write the cons. And some people use the reasons for or the reasons against, and you put a line down the middle. Now, you're trying to sell something, so you don't want to be the person that's going to give them a lot of the cons. You want to do more so the pros. So a couple of things that you could talk about, it's like, say, for instance, buying a house. You know, one of the pros is, hey, man, it's going to be in a beautiful neighborhood. One of the cons, it could be a little bit out of their budget. Now, a pro could be that they have a 2-story. And then for some people, that could be a con. Another thing that you can look at it as a home is in a good district for your kids to be able to go to good schools. And in that regard, it'd be a pro. And then if you look to the left, you know, you're going to say, it's not as big as we would like. Maybe it's a little smaller than they'd like. Instead of a 4-bedroom, it's a 3-bedroom and a half. And in this regard, that could be a con. The other pro could be it has a swimming pool. Then on the other side, it could be, see, here's the thing. What you want to do is try to build up as many pros and cons that you can so you can make an informed decision. I recently had to do this because there was an opportunity and some things that were coming my way, and I just could not make up my mind. My brain was like, golly, I feel overwhelmed. I had so much stuff going on. I felt pressured. And I just decided, hey, listen, I had a friend of mine says, hey, Gary, why don't you do the pros and cons, that thing you're talking about? You know what, dang, man, that's pretty good. Why don't I just go ahead and take a look at the situation? And I made my decision. There was more cons on this particular situation than there were pros. So, you know, when you make those decisions, you want to be able to have that capability to look at what's important to you. Now, when you're out there selling, like I said, Ben Franklin, the way he would make choices again is whatever had more in each column, that would generally be what his decision would be. So, you know, in my own life, I've used this in selling, but I never thought about, hey, man, maybe I should just use it for everyday things. So now when there's a topic or there's something that I want to do, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the pros and the cons. What should I do versus what should I not do? And I just thought, wow, that's pretty good. And it's very simple. But see, in selling, you know, like you're talking to somebody, here's the thing. If you're trying to sell something, you give them some input on the pros, okay? And then maybe one on the con, and then you let them make their own con list. Because, see, remember, you're trying to help people buy stuff. So if you start bringing up all the cons why they shouldn't buy stuff, they're probably not going to buy your stuff. You know, my name is Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy. I told you I'd tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and the warts and all what it's got to do with selling. And I love sales so much because I've been in it for so long. And I like to be an inspiring type person. I like to inspire people. You know, we can go out there and sell stuff, but sometimes we need them techniques. We need some opportunities. Now, I ain't saying manipulate people, okay? You got to let people be informed about what they can invest in, and if you can keep them informed, they're going to feel better about making a major purchase. More features, more benefits. The more benefits that you have that outweigh the amount of money they're going to spend, you're definitely going to be able to close more sales. And our subject for today is selling, how to make a decision, pros versus con technique. Now, again, what you want to do is you want to get this piece of paper. Remember, on the one side, the pros or the reasons for, on the right side, the cons, the reasons against. So in this regard, you have to write this down. It's a very simple technique, but you can use it in your own everyday life. You know, before you make major decisions, a lot of times you need to address that. And instead of being like, oh, Gary Lee, and worrying and thinking, dang, man, what am I going to do? I just told you what you got to do. My friend had to remind me of what I taught him. My goodness. And I'm so grateful because, see, I started doing this again. And I hadn't done it in a while because I hadn't talked on it. Sometimes out of sight, out of mind. You know, I got a whole bunch of videos now. So you might want to dive in there. There's little nuggets of information. Heck, I need to go back and watch my own videos. Maybe I can learn something. Because my name is Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy. Sometimes I'm a little bit different, but that's okay. There's an old saying, who cares if he's weird as long as his checks will clear? Okay, that's a big deal, right? And our topic for today is selling, how to make a decision versus with pros and cons. And it's a technique. You know, it's not a real complicated technique, guys, but listen, if you need to practice this, you try it yourself. And see, what will happen is you'll run into a customer, say, for instance, and maybe you're selling, I don't know, let's say furniture, for instance, and you talk to the customer and they can't kind of make up their mind between whether they should get this particular fabric, should they get recliners and so forth. So what you'll do is you'll pull out your little trusty piece of paper and you'll say, hey, listen, you know, I know it's a big decision, and so we want to make sure we can help you make a wise decision. So let's do like Ben Franklin. They'll go, Ben Franklin? I said, you'll say yes. You remember Ben Franklin with the kite, you know, and the electricity, and he did the bifocals and so forth, and they'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. Well, listen, what he used to do before he made any major decisions is he would ask himself questions. He'd get a piece of paper. So look here, we've got a piece of paper, and we're going to write on one side pros, which would be the reasons for, and then on the right side the negatives, which would be the cons, why we shouldn't go with this particular nice furniture or for whatever reason. And so let's go ahead and tally this up. So a pro for this particular one, it is the color that you said you liked. Is that correct? Yeah, that's a pro. And then you said that it may be a little bit out of your budget. So let's go ahead and put that in the con. Now, over here, you were talking about, you know, replacing some old furniture, and in this regard, it's going to make your home look better. Boom, boom. And then you also said over here that you were wanting to maybe finance it, but you didn't know, if you had the capability, because you didn't want to use your credit card. So we do offer that. That's a plus. And then what you do is you say, what about over here on the negatives? Well, it'll take 2 to 3 weeks to get. That's a negative. And over here on the right-hand side, it will fit in that space that you said. And in this regard, boom. And it also has the reclining capability so that you and your husband can relax when you get home. And that's another positive. So what you do is you're just adding on the positives, adding on the positives. Now, remember, if this is your personal thing, you know, let the customer, once you've gotten so many positives, say right over here on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, I can't remember, which is the cons. So you just hand it to them and let them sit right in front of them. If you're lucky, they may come up maybe one more and you've had like 10 or 15 positives. And in this regard, if they have some more positive, you look them right in the eye and you say, you know, Mr. or Mrs. whatever, I guess you've pretty much made your decision. You got more positive here versus cons, or it could be the opposite, depending on what you're trying to do or sell. And if they look at the positive, I said, it looks like you've already made your decision. So when did you want to go ahead and get that delivered? Next week, or would the following week be better? And you shut up. And as soon as they say, well, next week would probably be better, or 2 weeks from now would be better, and in this regard, you just write it up. But see, what you've done is you've given them the ammunition to be able to look at the buying process. They're looking at the capability to make a closing decision based on their own mental state. They weren't pressured, because remember, people don't like to be sold stuff. I don't. They like to buy stuff. They like to own stuff, but they don't like nobody to pressure them. But see, if they're using their own words, they're looking at the positives and the negatives, the pros and the cons, the reasons for versus the reasons against, it's kind of hard to make a bad decision when you made your decision right there in front of you, and it's like, it's just pretty simple. I know it sounds like a very simple process, but I've seen people do it on very, very high-end products. I've seen people do it, and I've done it on very low-end products, because all you need is a little piece of paper and a pen. It's real simple. And just have this where-to about yourself and be very professional. And sometimes, once you get them to look at the pros and the cons, and you say, so it looks like based on the information, we've made a wise decision. Wouldn't you agree? And they'll go, yeah. And then you say, well, how do you spell your last name? And if you say, how do you spell your last name, they're going to buy. They're going to go ahead and write. As soon as they say what their last name is, they bought. But see, the key to success in selling is you've got to have tools in your little selling toolbox. And this is just another great tool. Because my name is Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy. I told you I'd tell you some things you may not have thought about. It's pretty cool. And I want to thank my friend Paul for reminding me about this, because I told him about it a long time ago. And sometimes you need to be reminded, because see, our toolbox can get pretty heavy, and a lot of times we need to open it up and use the stuff and the tools and the capabilities that they got. So just saying, Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy, is always learning. And the more you learn, the more better you'll have, the more ammunition you have to be able to close sales. Now, we're not manipulators, guys. That's not what our whole bag is. If you can give them, like I said, the positives, and they can see it, and you can fit it in their budget, you can make sure it's something that they need, because you can't make somebody buy stuff that they don't really want or need, because what will happen is they'll reject it, and they'll say, no, I'm just looking. But see, if you give them some ammunition on why, and they're sitting there with their significant other, look, honey, this is our significant other or whatever, that sounds like a pretty good deal. I mean, it's got the pros on here. No, here's the cons why we shouldn't get it. The pros outweigh the cons. I guess what we're going to do, we'll go ahead and take it. And you just smile and you just write it on up. And again, anytime that you've sold something, remember, you want to scatter information through there, because there are guarantees and warranties and extended services and a lot of different things you can add on to a sale. So make sure that when you're having a conversation with the customers, don't wait to the very end to add those in. You want to make sure you bring those things up, because see, what will happen is if you're wanting to sell fabric protection, or if you're wanting to sell, I don't know, some maintenance agreement or a service agreement, and you don't tell them, that becomes a negative. And that means more money. And they'll say, no, we don't need that. No, we don't want that. So if you bring it up in advance, you're going to have a more bigger, better buying opportunity. So you want to put it all together instead of a package of separates. If you separate things, it's more expensive to the customer. But if you can fit it in their budget and you can bring it all together as a package, you have a better opportunity to sell. And my name is Gary Lee Stanley. We just had a very simple conversation about selling, how to make a decision, pros versus cons technique. And I hope you got something out of this, and give me a little thumbs up. Make sure you share this stuff, and go ahead and if you could, just make sure that when you're using these techniques, you do it for the betterment of man and not try to take advantage of people, because that's just not it. And in your own personal experience, in your own life, use this for those major decisions. Even the minor decisions could be used, and I'm going to use it as often as I can, because you know what? I got so much going on in my life, and I don't need that stress. So this is a real stress reliever. So go out there and sell something, but if you ain't asking for the order, you ain't selling. This is Gary Lee Stanley, your sales guy, and we just had a great conversation on selling, how to make a decision. Man, that's real good. The pros and the cons. It's a technique. So you use it, go out there and sell something, and just use it as a part of your other selling techniques, and you're going to sell a whole lot more. So do me a favor, go out there, a little fist bump, boom, boom, and you can do this. Go out there and sell something. And don't forget, pros and cons, Ben Franklin close, it really works. So go out there and sell something. Have a wonderful day. All right.